Coming up on this week's episode of TechSNAP, is there a fix to the human flaw in the banking system? We'll debate. Plus how hackers can take over your internal network with a single pixel on a web page. Then it's a huge batch of your storage questions, our answers, the Giganews conspiracy, and much, much more on this week's episode of TechSNAP. Hi everyone, and welcome to TechSNAP. This is episode 180 of Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly Systems Network and Administration podcast. We stream this episode live on September 18th, 2014. This episode is brought to you by our three fine sponsors, Ting, DigitalOcean, and IX Systems. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. Our live stream, that's powered by the incredible Scale Engine over at scaleengine.com. Go check it out, won't you? It's what powers our live stream. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our host, the admin, the tech, and the teacher, Mr. Alan Jude. Hey there, Alan.
Hey, Chris, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Hey, Alan. Now, I noticed you were sort of flaunting something on the pre-show, and most people don't watch live, and I just wondered if you wanted to share what your new goodie was with the recorded audience.
Sadly, it came about an hour too late to be featured in BSD Now yesterday.
Go figure, right?
But I have my new copy of the design and implementation of the FreeBSD operating system.
Ooh, some nice light reading material for the flight.
Yeah. It's 900 pages on how the internals of the operating system work.
With some fancy diagrams too, right?
Yes, with many diagrams and stuff. And it covers all the different subsystems from creating processes to how the kernel works to things like NFS, kernel services, process management.
Alan, do they cover
drivers? They
happen to cover systemd in that?
No.
Okay.
They cover UFS in great detail, plus ZFS in great detail, NFS, interprocess communications, networking, IP, TCP, system startup and shutdown.
ButterFS.
Yeah, so system startup and shutdown, this whole chapter explains why you don't need system.
Nice. Okay, very good.
It's a little, sadly, the UEFI stuff is a little too new to have made it in this edition of the book.
Well,
looking at the system startup and shutdown stuff.
There's always the next huge book that could be printed in 5 years.
Well, yes. Currently, the release cycle on this has been 10 years, but they're hoping to get that down.
So now, is that something that's available for anybody to get, or is that an early release?
This is, I pre-ordered it months ago, but it's actually available right now. You can go buy it from Amazon or anyone else. And if you're going to buy it off Amazon, you might as well use smile.amazon.com and make sure portion goes to the FreeBSD Foundation as well.
There you go. That makes sense. And
there's an ebook version coming. Currently, they're making some changes because they didn't like the way it got laid out. So they're going to improve it, and it'll come out. But the edition I bought includes a 45-day free access to an online edition. But you, depending who you buy it from, if you buy it directly from the textbook publisher, Addison Wesley, they're selling a combo pack where you get the print edition and the ebook version.
Oh, nice.
For a discount, or you can just buy either version off Amazon or whatever you'd like to do.
Yeah.
So this is an actual textbook that'll be in bookstores and stuff as well if you prefer to shop that way.
Boy, for those of you picking up FreeBSD, it sounds like a great way to go. And you might have noticed...
that's the thing. Obviously, this book kind of seems targeted towards people that want to be kernel developers or write a whole operating system or whatever. But I'm obviously not even a C programmer. But just the ZFS section alone is worth the whole book. But
it's fascinating.
Just understanding some of how things actually happen inside for some of the other stuff as a sysadmin makes my job easier.
Right.
Understanding what's going on with that network stack might help me solve that problem, or just understand how I can eke that much more performance out of it, or
very much
whatever it is I need to do. And just so
having a good go-to reference is also really valuable.
Yes, and it's all current now, right? Because the first edition of this book was 10 years ago now.
Right. Wow. Yeah. Very much.
Now, the other interesting thing is that even when Google is hiring Linux kernel developers, this is required reading.
There you go. You might have also noticed Alan is answering questions from our live chat room. Did you know we do TechSNAP live on Thursdays, most Thursdays? We won't be live next week because we're pre-recording. But normally you can join us over at jblive.tv Thursdays at 1 p.m. Pacific, which is
4 p.m. Eastern, 2000 UTC.
Boom. So next week, don't be alarmed if you don't see us there. We will have an episode out for download, though.
Yes. But I will be in Sofia, Bulgaria for EuroBSDCon. And so obviously won't be able to do a show because of time zones.
That's how it works. But never fear, the TechSNAP train continues on. Alan, before we jump into our first story this week, I want to thank our first sponsor this week, and that's the great folks over at Ting, my mobile service provider, and I think they should probably be yours too. Go to techsnap.ting.com. Please, techsnap.ting.com. That lets Ting know, A, you really appreciate them supporting the show, and just that's a way you can go check out what they have to offer and register your vote for continuing to support TechSNAP. So I think that's great right there. But B, it's going to save you some money. In fact, it can save you $25 off your first device. And if you already have a Ting device, well, then you'll get a $25 credit. Now, if the Ting device might be anything that's compatible with the Ting network, and they have a BYOD page you can check out. But one of the reasons we're starting with Ting this week is they have some big news to announce. There's a new series of phones you'll be able to bring over to the Ting network starting in just 10 days, September 29th. So you've got time right now to order your SIM card. If you have an iPhone 5 or 5S or 5C. So they're just now, like for right now, I have an iPhone 5 on the Ting network, and it's great because the hotspot and tethering features built into the iPhone are really slick, and on Ting, you only pay for what you use. So you get hotspot and tethering just part of your plan, because if you turn it on, it's just data usage. It's really straightforward. They just take your minutes, your messages, and your megabytes. They add them up. Whatever bucket you fall into at the end of the month, that's all you have to pay. It's $6 for the line, and then it's just your usage on top of that. And now you can bring the iPhone 5S or 5C over to the Ting network, which is awesome. If, sure, there's new iPhones out there. The iPhone 6 was just announced, but guess what? 2 days before the iPhone, or the day before the iPhone 6 was announced, the iPhone 5S was still a great phone. It still is, and now you're going to get some great deals on it. You can bring it over to the Ting network and save even more when you go to techsnap.ting.com. Go try out their savings calculator too and see what I've been talking about. Plug in your actual usage information, and then see what kind of savings you can get over a 2-year plan with no contracts and no early termination fee, and you only pay for what you use. But the best part is Ting knows if you're locked into an existing contract, because, well, that's kind of how the system works, they'll help you get out of that with the early termination relief program. They'll pay up to $75 per line that you have to get canceled. Man, that's awesome. And you combine that with their amazing dashboard, their great no-hold customer service when you call them at 1-855-TING-FTW. Yeah, no-hold customer service. And you can bring your device and own it, or you can buy a device directly from Ting, techsnap.ting.com. A really big thank you to Ting for sponsoring the TechSNAP program. Go check them out and see why they've been my mobile provider for so long now. It just really does make sense. And I think you'll kick yourself if you've been listening for a little while and you haven't checked it out yet. I think you'll kick yourself if you don't go over there and try it soon. It's a really great savings, and with the holidays coming up, better time than ever start saving on those monthly bills. TechSNAP.ting.com. Okay, Alan, so we're going to start with a little identity theft story, aren't we?
Yep.
All right, take us down the path, sir.
The New York Times has an article here. 5 people have been charged in an identity theft ring linked to bank tellers. So they've arrested 5 people, 3 women that worked as bank tellers and 2 men that were doing the other part of the scam. And basically what would happen is the bank tellers would get personal information from customers that would come in, right? So you come in to do your banking or whatever, and you pretty much just answer whatever questions the teller asks you, right? Before they'll let you access to your money or do whatever it is you want to do to your account, right? And so they would take that information and then later use it to withdraw money out of the customer's account. In total, they managed to steal $850,000 from numerous accounts over the course of several years before they got caught. So they would use the information they stole to create fake driver's licenses and checks and other stuff in order to gain access to the accounts, right? Being the bank teller, it's easy for them to get, the account numbers and stuff in order to create fake checks, or to know all the other information they need in order to get, a fake driver's license and so on. It says the victims were customers at several branches in the region, including JP Morgan Chase and Bank of America in the Bronx, White Plains, and Yonkers, New York. They also said that the bank has reimbursed the customers for all the accounts that were affected. So obviously the bank will likely be seeking to try to get their money back from the scammers, although I imagine most of it's gone now. So the 5 defendants were each charged with grand larceny, identity theft, and scheme to defraud. 4 of the 5 have already been arrested, but the 5th one is from Florida, and so obviously the New York police can't just arrest that person. But the New York State Attorney's Office is seeking to have that person arrested and brought to New York to face trial. And they said the 3 women involved in the scheme were tellers. The one in Florida was at a TD Bank in Apollo Beach, which is actually a Canadian bank that's operating in the U.S. They took over a bunch of banks down there back when your economy exploded.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I remember.
There's also Bank of America in White Plains, JP Morgan Chase in White Plains, and Wachovia, which is now Wells Fargo, that was in Newburgh, New York. And so the women worked as tellers there, and then they would steal the information and give it to the two men that were part of the ring, and they would get up, fake driver's licenses and other documents in order to make these fake checks to go and get cashed and steal the money out of the people's account. But it kind of raises this question: how do you maintain security of accounts and stuff at a bank when the person who's supposed to enforce that security, the teller, is the one that's actually stealing it?
Yeah, that's always something I've wondered why this isn't a bigger thing. Like, I've mentioned this probably once or twice on the show before, but when I worked at the bank, we had the automated teller call-in system that customers would call in and check their account balances and whatnot. And in the data center, we had LCD screens, or actually they were CRT screens, later LCD screens, that would just print out all of the information, like the person's name, their home address, all of their account information, all their balance. Like, we would see all of it right there on the screen and see the buttons they were pressing. And you could see their social if they went in the right area, like all that stuff right there on the screen. And I could just sit there with a notepad if I wanted to and go, ooh, $1 million balance. I'll write that one down. Checking account number. Oh, okay. And I thought, why is this not, it must be getting exploited all the time, and we just don't hear a lot about it because there's so much power and responsibility in those positions, and people get desperate and they just do stupid things.
Right, but at the same time, a bank teller seems like a pretty cushy gig, honestly.
They get treated like crap,
it has
though.
To be, you're right. Yeah.
People are rude, and they're like at the bottom of the organizational totem pole.
Yes, although in Canada, people are less rude. So that's maybe my experience is different than yours.
Fair.
But yeah, I see what you're saying. In general, though, it seems like for that type of an inside job that the teller's, taking a fairly big risk that they'll get caught. It seems pretty hard not to get caught when you're the person that's actually interfacing. Yeah,
it seems like it only worked for a limited amount of time before they tracked it back to you.
As far as the person who's got their identity stolen, the last person they're going to suspect is the bank teller they talk to. Because, like you said, they probably don't even remember that it was a person, right?
Right.
But at the same time, it seems like the bank is going to suspect that pretty quickly. Well, especially in this case, apparently, when they had the fake driver's licenses, they obviously put their own actual pictures on it. And so when you work at the bank, it's like somebody from the bank might recognize your face.
Yeah, very true.
And so on. But, New York is big, and obviously it's not like the bank has a big mug book of their employees that they can do facial analysis against. Do
you feel like in a lot of ways, the bigger story is like that we cover a lot is the existing financial system just doesn't really provide enough protections for fraud?
Or that the banks would rather move away from the security a bit, have the risk that things happen, and have to pay to recoup the loss than they would to inconvenience people by putting more security in place?
Yeah, there's definitely that aspect of it too, but it goes
Honestly,
beyond that. It goes like
a thought experiment. It's how do you have it so that the bank teller is verifying your identity and making sure that you're the right person before giving you access to the account.
Right.
While at the same time not giving them so much access that they could then impersonate you.
Right. Yeah. I feel like you got to almost take the human factor out of it.
Yeah.
Well,
right. And sometimes I can see where a teller is more secure than an ATM.
Sure.
You can't install a card skimmer as easily.
Right.
But maybe you can actually. And so on. But anyway, I just thought it was an interesting question of what could you do to make the bank more secure by just having the teller, what would you have to do with the teller in order to...
How could you refactor it, keep the teller, keep the human interaction, keep that personal assistance without giving them so much access that they can go away and do something like this? I don't know. Maybe the audience has an idea. Go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com, click the contact link, and shoot us your ideas. How would you build a system like this?
Someone in the chat room points out that banks have insurance against teller fraud.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great for the bank.
But if they can have steps to reduce that, then their insurance rates will go down.
Doesn't matter if it causes me a week of inconvenience. I'm still butthurt about it.
Yeah. And then I had some other point. What was it about?
ATMs?
No.
Because, we were talking about, take the human element out of it. That's an ATM, but then we have all of these flaws with ATMs constantly.
Right.
So, yeah.
No, something about the human and verifying stuff. Oh, when you're a merchant and someone's presenting a credit card and you're suspicious or whatever, like for the address verification, you can call the bank and they will answer yes or no questions about the account. So you can be like, here's the card number. Is the account holder's address this? And they say yes or no. But obviously the person answering the phone can see the actual address. Right? So they have access to all that kind of information.
Yeah. Huh. I just don't see how we're going to fix it anytime soon, but maybe the audience has a great answer.
And, you know, there's no such thing as perfect security, and security is always a trade-off against usability and ease of use and so on.
It's true.
And so finding that right spot is hard. While at the same time, you know, the bank seems to have an interest in, they want to make it easier so that you'll keep your money in a bank, not in a box under your bed.
Or Bitcoin.
Yeah.
That's why I use Bitcoin, Alan. No humans involved.
That's worked out well for you. You've lost.
Let me see. No, I've only ever made money on Bitcoin, but that's only because I sit on it.
How many Bitcoins have you lost because they've stolen?
Yeah, that was like, I think it was like 50 or 60 or 70 Bitcoins.
Yeah,
that is rough. That is
right.
Oh.
And unlike a bank, there was no bank to
FDIC to
yeah,
I know.
The FDIC is only when the bank goes under.
True. Right. Well, this was
the bank's responsibility when the
I mean, if I was like, so this was what happened was I had an online account that got compromised.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, your account specifically, it was the entire bank that got broken into.
Right. It was all of them.
In that case.
Yeah.
They just stole the wallet file and made up all the coins. Anyway.
At least half.
Yeah. So, you know, we talk a lot about banks and online security, but as we can see, there's, you know, not perfect offline either.
Very true. All right. Well, I'll take a second here and thank our next sponsor, DigitalOcean. Head over to DigitalOcean.com and arm yourself with the promo code SNAPSeptember so you can get a $10 credit. And I'll tell you a little bit about DigitalOcean and why you might want that $10 credit. So let's start with what DigitalOcean is, because it's pretty dang impressive. They're a simple cloud hosting provider dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way to spin up your own server. And users can create a server in less than 55 seconds, and pricing plans start at only $5 per month, which gets you 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, one CPU, and a terabyte of transfer connected to Tier 1 bandwidth, because DigitalOcean has data center locations in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, and London. And the great thing is their pricing plans and their value structure is so straightforward that if you say, all right, well, I can get by on 512 megs of RAM for a little while, but if we grow, maybe I want to do more things. To step up to the next level, it's just very straightforward. The pricing plans are all listed out on their site. In fact, they even offer hourly pricing. So now you can start to see when you do something that gets you a $10 credit by using, like, say, our promo code. Oh, I don't know, maybe Snap September. You put that in there, you get that $10 credit. You try out that $5 rig for 2 months with a $10 credit for free. You can try out CoreOS, anything you want over on DigitalOcean. And the best part is, it'll give you an opportunity to play with that interface that you use to manage your droplets. It's such an intuitive control panel. And you can even have a chance to play with their API, because power users can replicate a lot of the functionality, even more so, on a much larger scale with DigitalOcean's straightforward API. And you can do DNS management, take snapshots of your servers, one-click installations of things like Rails, Docker, GitLab, WordPress, one click, and you've got it. And then you can make backups before you make any big changes. You want to move them around. You have private networking in many of their data centers, IPv6 coming online all the time. And like I mentioned, recently rolled out CoreOS support if you really want to try something exciting. And when you use that promo code SNAPSeptember, you'll get that $10 credit, and you can try any of this stuff for free for absolutely 2 months. Go over there and see why DigitalOcean made that early investment in SSD drives. Learn a little bit more about the control panel, the one-click installations, or the APIs, and check out their pricing structure. You can see what I say. If you're watching the video version, you see it right here on the screen. Doesn't this make a lot of sense? It's so straightforward, and you know exactly what you're going to get into. You know exactly what your cost is going to be, unlike a lot of other cloud services that will be based on the billing, where I had a client where we set something up on an hourly system, and just the base run of the box with very minimal CPU usage turned out to be $200 a month for less hardware than you get with the DigitalOcean $5 a month plan. And then they go up to $10, $20 up from there. It makes so much sense. And when you use the promo code SNAPSeptember, you get that $10 credit. DigitalOcean.com. And a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the TechSNAP program. Go check them out, guys. They rock. Okay, Alan, that moves us right on to our next story on the TechSNAP program. And I think maybe because you're traveling, you're looking outside the U.S., you're saying, you know what, Brazil's got a story we need to cover today.
This one was more a because we kind of predicted it, right?
Oh, like, really? I love that.
Partly. If you remember back, since like episode 2 or whatever, we always talked about how the nightmare scenario was the attackers take over some big news site
yes,
and are able to stick an iframe on there and infect everybody who visits or something, right?
Very much so, yeah.
Well, that's what's happened in this one.
Oh, okay.
So in an attack, we predicted, the website Politica Estado, I don't know.
Easy for you to
Portuguese,
say. Yeah.
Which is one of the biggest newspapers in Brazil. Their website was compromised. The pages had a series of iframes injected into them, and those iframes would load little 1x1 pixel fake images that were actually trying to brute force your router.
Oh, lovely. Boy, this is exactly what we talked about.
Yes, we talked about this specific attack before, and I mean, this is the first time it's actually been used rather than, just in an email or something. This is actually live on a website.
Wow.
And so basically what each little image would do was try, guess your router's IP address, 192.168.0.1 or 1.1 or a couple other possible combinations that are very popular. Guess the username, admin, root, a couple others specific that seems specific to Brazilian DSL ISPs and so on. And common passwords, because, there's only a couple of really, really popular makes of router out there, especially now that most people get their router from their ISP. Well, the ISPs tend to have a default set of credentials on it, right? Luckily, the last time my ISP provided one, they had a different password for each one. Although it's entirely possible that password is based on the MAC address, which means that if I had malware on the network, I could easily find out what the MAC address of it is and then guess the password.
Yep.
So that's not a great example either. They said they found 5 domains and 9 different DNS servers that were used in the attack. So basically, what they would do is embed the URL, http://username : password at your router IP / a string, and that string will, for a bunch of different models of router, would be the page that controls the DNS servers you use.
Aha!
And they would change those to be theirs. So once you have your DNS servers changed, if you try to go to certain banks or other websites that they want your credentials from, you would actually go to their server instead, right? So you try to go to your bank, and it'll just not use SSL or something, or use SSL on a fake domain. No, that wouldn't work. Right. So yes, they would just not use SSL at all, and unless the bank had done, HTTP strict security or something, and your browser already knew that there definitely should be SSL, then you might get redirected to a site that looks like your bank but wasn't, even though you're actually at yourbank.com.
And I wonder if
you just wouldn't have the SSL because they wouldn't have the certificate to prove.
Do you suppose that since it's Brazil, there's a higher chance they're on mobile? I don't know if that's possible.
This specific attack was not targeting mobile, although the iframe could hack your router just as easily from your phone.
Right, and if you just
it doesn't require anything other than your browser trying to access that URL because it's trying to load an image that isn't there.
That's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of that, and manipulating DNS is that it affects all devices on the network. No malware required.
Exactly. So yeah, they found 5 domains and 9 different DNS servers that were being used, and they also found them hosting bank phishing sites, so it's obvious what they were after. I said the payloads were trying the usernames admin, root, and GVT, which I think is ISP or something. There's a reason why that one was in the list, and a bunch of different default passwords. They said the hackers are well aware of the shortcomings of home and small business routers, most of which are woefully shy of the appropriate patch level, because people don't know to update the firmware, and even the devices say don't update the firmware unless you have to because you might break it or whatever, right? And they said they're likely protected only by a default or weak password, and that's often true. And it's interesting, at DEF CON they had an ingeniously named talk called the So Hopelessly Broken. So Soho as in small office, home office.
Yeah.
But So Hopelessly Broken was the name of the contest they had.
Broken.
Yeah. To enumerate the security issues around Soho routers, and they found 15 different zero-day vulnerabilities just at the contest.
Wow.
And those were disclosed and demonstrated during the contest, leading to 7 full router compromises and other attacks that could lead to the corruption of an internal network.
Oh man! And just during the conference.
Yeah. well, during the contest, which I think was held before and then presented at the conference. But I think either way, it was like in one weekend they came up with all this. Although it was a bunch of people working on it. But anyway, the malware that they were using, or the JavaScript that was doing all this, was also able to determine which subnet your browser, what subnet your computer was using from your browser, which is something you wouldn't normally expect it to be able to do.
Yeah.
So I found another website that shows how this works. So if you go to net.ipcaf.com, it actually will, using some JavaScript, determine which subnets you're on your computer, and from that, it's fairly easy to guess where the router might be.
I see. Yeah, it's got me.
Yep.
Huh.
Mine's even got the shows VirtualBox's virtual adapter in there.
So I wonder if I bring it up in Firefox, does it show other stuff? Does it? Because right now it doesn't show a lot under Chrome. Does it? Does it depend more on depending on the browser? No, it seems to be good.
On mine, it just lists. Well, mine, I have 2 different network cards that are connected to 2 different networks, plus the VirtualBox adapter, and it shows all 3.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. I see. Make the locals proud. net.ipcaf.com. CALF.com. Interesting, Alan. Well, there you go. See, we warned you. It only took
so there's also additional coverage over at Securi and SecureList. And also, we mentioned this specific kind of attack back on TechSNAP episode 86. So almost 2 years ago, we talked about this same attack being used in North America, and the fact that when used in a phishing email, your iPhone would auto-load the images, therefore hacking your network without you even touching anything, just by getting the email, not even opening it all the way, I don't think. Just previewing it could trigger it.
Cat Got Your Router, episode 86.
Yep. And then also episode 106, we talked about other problems with routers.
It seems like this is an ongoing problem. Episode 106, Evil DNS is Evil. Oh, come on. You know, like, at a certain point, you think maybe the industry would just start figuring it out. Nope. Yes, the TechSNAP program continues to preach it on, and hopefully eventually someone out there, Alan, someone out there. All right. Any other thoughts on that there story?
Not that one, nope.
All right, Alan, well, then you know what I want to do right now is I want to mention IX Systems. In fact, I want to mention specifically how you could visit ixsystems.com/TechSNAP and learn more about their awesome rigs powered by those incredible Intel processors. IX Systems builds a lot of the gear for Scale Engine. In fact, do you buy anywhere else? It's all IX, yeah. Of course, we've got gear here at the Jupiter Broadcasting Studios powered by IX Systems. There's a lot of reasons to go there. First of all, they've got a deep bench of experts that work on the fundamental technology that power a lot of these back-end infrastructures. You use something that needs a little, I don't know, network-attached storage type magic to it. Maybe some big-end RAID. I don't know, maybe you want something that's fast that can live up to the demands of your corporation. Well, here's the problem. That's a different requirement for every single person. But IX Systems has the expertise and the partnerships to make sure they can build you something that'll do exactly what you need. In fact, even Alan, when he needs to build something specific, goes to IX and says, guys, here's kind of what I'm looking for. And they'll work with him. And they'll design something with you that's really...
I'm actually in the process of coding yet another machine.
Are you really?
And it was like, yes. I was like, well, I'm trying to decide. I have the last machine I bought from you guys. And I could just add more HBAs and do sleds and add more disks and controllers to that existing machine. Or I could get another whole machine and kind of structure it differently.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and it's like, well, could always use an extra machine, right?
Yes.
And I'm like, what's the price difference for this? And then I get a nice quote. And I was like, well, how much would it cost to upgrade this to those new V3 processors with the DDR4 RAM?
Yeah.
And the price increase was very small. I was like, I'm going to do that.
Do it. That's awesome.
Yeah. What was it? Like, came out to like 3% more to...
That's so worth it.
Yes.
Did you see, too?
Most of the cost was just the extra DDR4 RAM is a little bit more expensive.
What's FaucetCon? They just posted an update about FaucetCon 2014. I'm
guessing some free open source software.
Yep. September 11th through the 13th in Orlando, Florida. IX Systems sponsored a free BSD booth at the expo area, and they have a little recap about it. I love it when they do this, too. This is another great thing about IX Systems is, so they've got the expertise. They've also got a deep set of hardware partnerships that's extremely strategically important to them.
With Hitachi, Western Digital, LSI for the controllers, and Intel for the processors, obviously, and they've got these new all-flash arrays you can get now if you need it. They've even got working with VMware now, and the FreeNAS is certified as one of the devices for your ESXi as well.
That's huge. That's huge. Yep. And then so on top of those fundamental partnerships, they also partner with the community, and they talk about it frequently on their blog. And they talk a little bit here about the ZFS presentation.
They're just huge parts of the community, and in addition to going to all those conferences and making sure there's a FreeBSD booth at every Linux conference they can get their hands on, they also sponsor all the BSD conferences like Asia BSDCon, Euro BSDCon, BSDCan, plus host their own Meet BSD, which was coming up at the beginning of November. And that's actually partnered with Western Digital because the conference will actually take place at Western Digital's headquarters in San Jose.
That's great. And they're also sponsors of the BSD Now program. So you know what? They're just and this program. I mean, they really are tied into the community, and we are extremely appreciative of that. So you can go visit them. Go over to ixsystems.com/TechSNAP. You can download their white paper to learn even more, and just let them know that you appreciate them supporting the TechSNAP program by visiting that page.
And they'll also be present at the OpenZFS Developer Summit, which is the weekend after. No, the week after MeetBSD. So I won't be able to go because I would have to either stay in San Francisco for, another whole more than another week, or go home and come back in less than a week, and neither of those really make sense for me.
But. Right. So thank you to IX, and check them out, ixsystems.com.
Yes, so definitely head over there, grab the white paper, convince your boss.
And start actually
much happier.
Stop being so frustrated. And I did mention BSD Now. Episode 55 is out. The Promised Wayland. Is that how you want me to say it? The Promised Wayland. The Promised WAN. Walan.
Yeah, something like that.
A good episode.
It's a funny pun.
Yeah. No, that's you guys are all about that.
It's talking about Adrian Chad, who's one of FreeBSD's main wireless developers, but also does lots and lots of other things. So we talked to him about things that this audience and the last audience might be more interested in, specifically running FreeBSD on a desktop, what other work needs to get done to make that work better, talking about suspend and resume and making sure USB stuff works after you come out of resume or out of sleep and so on.
Also, maybe relevant to this audience interest, you guys talked about PFMB, right? The pfSense backup.
Yes, we also talked about a tool to back up your config off your pfSense.
Yep.
And the feedback, we talked about Firewall 1, a graphical interface to generate the rules for your firewall if you want to not run pfSense but just have a standard firewall, but need a little help writing the rules.
Yeah, so that sounds like a...
Or even converting a rule set from some Linux firewall into one of the BSD firewalls.
Oh, snap, Alan. Are you kidding me? Jeez Louise.
Well, Firewall 1 can generate the rules for like 8 or 10 different firewalls. Including IPFW and IP filter.
Okay.
PF and IP filter. On FreeBSD, you can use any of the three of those.
Gotcha.
But anyway, so it can also obviously do IP tables and a bunch of other rubbish like that.
Oh. Okay, good.
And so you could import the rules from IP tables, I think, anyway. And
I mean, who would want to, right?
Well, if you already have some IP table rules, you could import them, convert them to PF.
I guess if you accidentally fell into IP tables
one
time.
Cells.
Yeah, right. If you accidentally fell into IP tables one time,
or worse, if you inherited IP tables someone else wrote and you can't read them,
right? Because they're not written in plain English.
It's literally unreadable.
Right. It's impossible. So therefore, must convert to PF. Very good, Alan. Well, I think that's everything we have for the news segment, right? I think that's it. Yep. You know what that means? It's time for the TechSNAP feedback. Thanks for sending your emails to TechSNAP@JupiterBroadcasting.com or popping that contact link at the top of the Jupiter Broadcasting website, or even better, starting a thread in our subreddit over at links.techsnap.tv. Our first email this week comes in from Peter, and he says, "Hello, Chris, Alan, hello, chat room, and listeners and viewers. I have a question regarding FreeNAS performance, and no, I'm not trying out ZFS on a 1 gig RAM machine before you think that. I've tried to reuse a 3-year-old virtualization host as storage. It's an HP box with dual Xeons, 24 gigabytes of RAM, 8 15K SAS drives, and 8 NICs. I tried iSCSI and NFS with various clients, even Windows, but couldn't get more than 50 megabytes write performance a second. Regardless if I used RAID 10 or 6, hardware RAID, ZFS with and or without NIC teaming, CPU usage is low on all tries. However, if I write data to the disk locally with DD, I'm able to get more than about 200 megabytes a second. So I would expect at least 100 megabytes a second on a single NIC with a gigabit network. Any idea how to solve this? I tried CentOS, which gave me around 80 megabytes via NFS. Better, but still less than I expected. Thanks for all the shows. Love it. Regards, Peter.
I'm wondering how he's testing in particular. Like, obviously, writing small files over NFS will sync at the end of each file, so that might be part of it. But he also obviously mentioned RAID 10 and 6 and hardware RAID. So all of those obviously are going to not be the same as ZFS. I wonder how he laid out his ZFS.
He also mentions it's still slow over iSCSI.
Right. And specifically he mentioned, writing to the disk locally works fine, whereas over the network isn't. And that the problem doesn't go away even if he uses CentOS, although he's getting slightly different performance.
Maybe he needs more NICs. He's only
got
8
I do
now.
wonder what kind of NICs they are and how they're configured and so on.
Yeah.
But
so this is so I was hoping maybe you'd have something that jumps to mind because I don't really.
Well, with those disks, you'd think you'd be getting more.
Yeah.
Honestly, I get 600 megabytes a second out of 6 7200 RPM SATA desktop drives in my array at home.
I can get, with just a few drives in a RAID 0 over NFS, I can get, over 100 megabytes a second, and he's only getting 80 in best case with CentOS.
Well, but, on an older machine with, those are SAS drives.
Yeah, 24 gigs of RAM, Xeon processors.
Right, it's not like they're old, but
yeah,
I do wonder, I love when people say a Xeon. It's like that
Xeon
covers
what?
everything from a Pentium 1
right
up to
is it 1.8 gigahertz? Is it 2.
Well, even the gigahertz, that is a false telling as well, right? 1.8 gigahertz could be, the Pentium 4 version or the
right, yeah,
the i7 version.
Yeah.
But 24 gigs of RAM, it's probably at least a 5200 something. At least probably a Xeon E5000 at least. Most likely slightly better than that. So there's no excuse for those slow speeds. Like even that DD speed seems really slow.
Yeah, I agree.
When you're at the shell while writing, if you run gstat, it will show each device and what it's actually writing and stuff, and that might provide some output.
Also verify how you're measuring. Details. I mean, because like what Alan's saying is, make sure the tool you're using is the right tool to be measuring your speed.
There's a couple things. So gstat, and you can do -F and then a regular expression to select the disk. So if they're SATA disks, they're probably DA0, 1, 2, 3. So you do gstat -F DA dot, and that will only pick up DA followed by a single something like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, right? And it won't pick up things like your DA2P4 or something, right, for your different partitions, and it'll unclutter the list some. So that'll let you see the number of IOPS and the actual speeds that you're writing to the individual disks, which might provide some background on what's going on. He didn't say how he's laying out the ZFS at all. If your biggest concern is speed with ZFS, I would say do 4 2-disk mirrors with your 8 drives, although you could choose to do 2 RAID Z1s of 4 drives each as well, if that's what you're after. Yeah, I'm not sure why he's getting that. But yes, obviously you should be able to max out the NIC. If you want to just make sure that that's, if you want to find out if that's the bottleneck, you can install iPerf. There's also, if you Google for it, there's a version for Windows as well, which is helpful if you needed it for a client or whatever. And so you can ensure that from the box, your storage machine, you can actually send a gigabit to the other machine, because your problem might be the NICs or the switch or something not letting you get there.
Yeah.
I've seen people, when it's a Realtek NIC, which I'm doubting is what he has in his HP, they're probably Broadcoms, where they would top out at like 500 megabits, but if they stuck an Intel card in it, they could get 950 megabits over the same.
And also, I'm sure he's thought of this, but just make sure the disk you're sending from is super fast. If you have an SSD you could use for sending testing, that'd be probably best. So that way you can send as much data as fast as possible.
Right. Well, I think he's DDing from DevZero or something, but
yeah, when he's doing DD,
I would like to know how he's doing the test over NFS as well. If he's DDing from DevZero to the target via NFS, what speed difference does he get there?
And has he tried the no sync mount options for the NFS mount? That might be something to try.
Yes, that is probably one of the big things that people run into with ZFS is not using no sync, and so every time it stops writing, it waits until all that data is actually flushed all the way, which in ZFS, if you didn't ask for it, doesn't happen until up to 5 seconds later. If you do ask for it, it forces the whole thing, all the outstanding data to get written sooner, and it can slow things down.
Which NFS does.
Yes, by default, but isn't always what you want.
Right.
And so.
Yes.
And if you're doing a lot of synchronous writes and you need them to speed up, that's where the adding an SSD to ZFS speeds it up, right? Your
for the
ZIL.
ZIL. Yep.
But if you're just writing big media files or whatever, you don't actually need that, and so save your money.
Next email comes in.
Spend it on RAM.
Well, he's got a lot.
Yeah, he's got 24 isn't lots, but that's a good number for that age of machine.
Yeah. John writes in. He says, "Hello. I would like to make a self-healing external USB drive. As I understand it, when two disks are in a mirror set up on ZFS, the file system checks the integrity of the data on each drive. When the corrupt sector is found on, say, disk 1, ZFS copies good data from disk 2 to another location on disk 1, so it has, in a sense, self-healed. If I make two ZFS partitions on one drive and then put them into a mirror, would that work, and will the file system heal corrupted sectors? Thanks for the insight. Take care, John."
Yes, although the issue with that is if the drive dies, then it's gone.
Would that be crazy slow, too?
It would definitely be twice as slow.
I guess you wouldn't.
Probably a bit more than twice as slow because it's going to try to write to both of them at the same time. So the head on the drive is going to have to bounce back and forth, back and forth, back and forth between the two different spots where it's trying to write.
Yeah.
And it'll make a mess.
Yeah.
If you actually want to do that on ZFS with just one drive, if you just set the property copies to 2, it will store every block of data on the hard drive twice.
Well, that's not bad.
And it will achieve basically the same thing with less of performance, in fact. Although it might write the 2 copies side by side, but if the only worry is the individual bit flips or sectors rotting or whatever, then that's not such a big deal.
There you go. Good tip.
That'll definitely work better than just 2 partitions. Honestly, what you really want to do is have 2 external drives and mirror them that way.
And there's I can't remember, is it G-Sync? See, let me go find it. I had one for media editing from otherworldcomputing.com or macsales.com, that's what it is. And they make them for people that have like Mac Pros and stuff, but they're just standard drives. And they are external enclosures with 1, 2, 3, and 4 different, it depends on which one you want. And they just hook up over USB, Thunderbolt, eSATA, USB 3.0. And I've used 3 or 4 of them for editing. I usually use them in a RAID 0 configuration, but you could also use them in RAID 0, or you could use them in, RAID. They go up to now 10 terabytes too, which is kind of cool. And you can also get some of them with an SSD cache. So it actually comes with 3 drives, or two big drives, and then an SSD drive too. It's pretty neat. So there's lots of options out there. That's macsales.com, which they kind of target more editors and stuff like that, but they'd work for anybody. I've used them on Linux boxes and Windows boxes and Macs. All right, so Benny writes in, following up on our ZFS on Linux topic from last week that we talked about, and he says, "Hey guys, Benny from Israel. Just sending my quarterly message. I have some production feedback on ZFS on Linux, so here it is." And he's just going to list a couple things for our information. Number 1, it works great. I used it for hosting development VMs with VMware vSphere. Number 2, I also have the original ZFS machine, a genuine Oracle Sun Storage 7320. That's what got me hooked on ZFS to begin with. It was our production for our VM data stores. A few more tips. He says, I always use /dev/disk/bypath. since SDA, SDB, SDC tend to change. Another tip, you can import a pool from FreeBSD easily if you use the -F flag onto Linux. It works great. I always use a ZIL.
You can import a pool from FreeBSD, but you wouldn't want to do it from one that's newer than your version of Linux.
Right.
So
That's key.
there are some caveats there. You can't import a pool if it has features that Linux doesn't support yet. So if you're designing a pool to be compatible between
Watch for that.
FreeBSD, Illumos, Linux, and the OpenZFS on OS X, which is actually a port of ZFS on Linux to OS X rather than coming straight from FreeBSD. I'm not sure why they did it that way, but because of that, it's just as far behind as Linux is on features. So you probably want to make sure you have like V5000, obviously, but you haven't used up a bunch of the extra features like bookmarks and the file system limits and stuff, because ZFS on Linux won't understand those yet. It will eventually, but...
A couple other notes. I know this one you probably agree with. Never use RAID cards. Even if they have pass-through or JBOD mode, just use regular HBAs or SAS cards.
Yeah, a simple LSI HBA is usually the best bet.
Yeah. He says he always uses compression, thinks it works very well.
Yes, LZ4 on all of the things. ZFS on Linux doesn't actually have that yet, but it will very soon, hopefully, I think, in the 0.64 version, because LZ4 compression is much faster to compress and just unimaginably much faster decompressing, like gigabytes per second per core, and it'll use all your cores. And the other nice thing is LZ4 has an override. Basically says, after I've compressed the file for so long, if the compression rate isn't at least 12.5%, give up and write it uncompressed instead of wasting a bunch of CPU time, which is what the regular code for gzip compression would have done.
And just a couple other points he mentions. If you have the money, always get an SSD cache, totes. And he says his best experience with RAID Z10, which is a set of mirrors stripped.
Yes, striping on mirrors will give you the best IOPS and the best throughput. You just get less storage than RAID Z. Okay,
our last ZFest email. It's like a ZFest here, Alan. It's a ZFest. Comes in from Jed. It says, "Dear Alan and Chris, I have a submission for your call on ZFS on Linux stories." And he links us to a blog post of his. I don't know if you had a chance to check out his. He has a great, and he's also right now
doing. Is this the guy that we met at Linux Fest Northwest?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
I've been talking back and forth with him on Google Plus, helping him.
Yeah.
He had this array built with all these older drives, and he wanted to upgrade some of them. And I was showing him how to do zpool replace, to replace a bunch of those smaller Toshiba drives with newer, bigger drives.
He's got 16 now in this Linux box, all running.
And so he's out of ports and expandability.
Yeah,
so now what he's doing is replacing the smallest of the drives with bigger drives.
Yeah.
And so so the way he has it set up is 4 separate RAID Z1s, each of 4 disks. And so I showed him the zpool replace command where he can connect extra disks and do... So normally what you could do in a situation like this is pull one drive out, and the RAID Z will keep the array alive, and you plug a new drive in, and it'll resilver all the data onto the new drive. The risk is that during that, while it's resilvering, which might take like a day or something, one of the other drives could fail, and then your whole array is pooched. Whereas if you have just that one extra SATA port somehow, which he does, then he could do zpool replace old disk, new disk. And what that'll do is it'll actually temporarily add the new disk as a mirror of the old disk and sync them, right? So the original one's still online, so all your disks are still connected and working, but you're copying all the data off one onto the other, and then once it's finished, it'll put the new drive as part of the array, and the old one will be offline. So then you can pull it out, and then use that port to do that with the next disk. Or if you have enough extra ports, you can even do this on multiple drives concurrently. So he's actually, from the email I saw, doing it on 2 or 3 of the drives at once, so he can get them all replaced as quickly as possible.
I love that he's blogging about it too. It's great to see the pictures. Like this, it's one thing to write about it, but he's showing us the controller cards.
Well, especially using the little PCI dust covers.
Yeah.
And then bending them over and using those to hold all the drives.
Right.
In the case.
Very clever.
Yes.
Jed's very resourceful. I like that.
He is.
All right.
Have you seen that bicycle he rides?
Yeah. I know. Okay, so Alan, we have a submission for the Hall of Shame. Now you remember Hall of Shame submissions need at least 7 votes for them to be considered, and then Judge Alan will rule. Now, submitted for today's consideration with 20 upvotes from the TechSNAP subreddit, Comcast, as an entry into the Hall of Shame. The Baron writes, Comcast is pretty horrid. From their latest attack on Tor, to their horrid customer service, to improper security system installation, to their free access points they turned on to everybody, also known as Honeypot Haven, and their man-in-the-middle attacks. Gotta love free APs too. Well, you get the point. I nominate Comcast to the Hall of Shame, and I'm honestly kind of surprised it's not there already.
Right. Now, while we haven't really cited them for anything security related, I think that man-in-the-middle injection of the JavaScript pop-ups and stuff,
pretty awful.
That'll count.
Do you think the Tor thing is legit? Do you think they've really warned users to stop using Tor?
I don't know. Not that many of them, or we would have heard about it more, but it's possible.
Here's my final thing that kind of pushes it over the edge. Remember how Comcast almost took out 2 episodes of TechSNAP once before? And remember when you came here?
Yes.
Yeah. And then recently our piece of crap modem they gave us has been crapping out and interrupting my unfiltered preparation for 2 weeks in a row. So I say we go with it. I think we should add them
based on the JavaScript injection.
Okay, so Alan rules. Comcast will be added.
Molesting your internet connection
to number 12. Now, people have asked if we could link why they were added. If people wanted to put together that for us, I would be happy to code that up, but I'm not going to be able to go through and get a list of all that. But they do have the Hall of Shame, and each entry has been submitted to the TechSNAP show and reviewed in an episode of TechSNAP. And Comcast will now be number 12 in the TechSNAP Hall of Shame, which is listed on our subreddit over at links.techsnap.tv. Thank you, the Baron, for submitting Comcast. They have been the bane of my existence recently, so I, for one, am happy to welcome Comcast to the TechSNAP Hall of Shame. And Alan, with our feedback all done, that means it's time for the TechSNAP Roundup. Welcome to the TechSNAP Roundup. Yeah, that's what that crazy music means. Now, the roundup are stories that just didn't fit at the top of the show, but we still want to give you some links to follow up on after the show. And a lot of these links came directly from our subreddit over at links.techsnap.tv. Like this first one that has my mind melting. I don't know what to do. I don't know who to believe. It's coming from cryptome.org. And they're claiming that Giganews is an FBI operation, a sting operation being put on by the FBI. And the way they get to this is by a quote-unquote whistleblower who was a former Giganews employee who found some child porn, tried to initiate the proper response, and then discovered that he was essentially recruited by the FBI to go back and work as part of the FBI team that works at Giganews.
Well, yeah, so what he says happened is that he deleted 3 Usenets that had child porn in them, and then was yelled at and told he was going to be fired or whatever, and then that those were restored from backups because that would jeopardize evidence that the FBI was using in a case or something. And he was like, whatever. And so then, he went on, and then he actually contacted the FBI and said, hey, these guys are like not deleting the child porn. And they invited him to a meeting, and then that's when they basically apparently recruited him.
Now, Giganews, and I feel awful, has come out and said, well, look, now we're in the position of proving a negative. Like, if we come out and say we're not an FBI operation, then you'll just say we're lying. And what do you do at this point? Because I'll be honest, I've been a Giganews customer for years, Alan.
Weird stuff in the post overwrite Cryptome. There's a bunch of weird things.
Yeah.
Talking about,
how certain employees were removed from the site.
It turns out this guy was an employee, but I didn't know it before. But I didn't mention that earlier in the thing in the timeline. I don't know.
I wonder. Yeah, I don't know what to make of it. I mean, I've literally downloaded.
Well, obviously, if they are, it seems that their target is not the regular piracy.
No, it'd be maybe people sharing or people doing. Yeah, it's not like people downloading.
Well, right. It's not the downloading. Obviously, it seems like they're going after the child porn in particular.
And this Nick guy is sticking to his story too. So, and maybe the audience has some information. Don't know, but it's something. And if you're a Giganews user, it's worth maybe reading. We'll have a link in the show notes. Take it with some salt.
I've never used Usenet.
It's great. It's great. It's way better than torrents. But don't talk about it. You're not allowed to talk about it.
Sure, but
don't torrent either.
the people that always say it's better than torrents, I'm like, you're just using the wrong torrents.
Maybe, yeah. All right.
But anyway,
except for you don't get when we download stuff on torrents here, we get letters from our ISP and stuff.
Well, you're obviously downloading torrents that aren't legal to download then.
Well, that would be true. All right. Next story. Well, I'm not saying me. I'm just saying in general it could happen to people. The Archie exploit kit is targeting, Adobe Silverlight. Just, some vulnerabilities. Nobody uses that stuff, though,
Adobe
right?
and Silverlight,
right.
not Adobe Silverlight.
No, Adobe and Silverlight and things like that.
So
Nobody uses that stuff,
targeting exploits in Flash and Silverlight. Well, we don't see exploits for Silverlight that often because there aren't very many websites that use
not
it.
Anymore.
And honestly, not that many people had it installed. And then it's like, oh, right, everybody has it installed to watch Netflix.
Yep. Thanks, Netflix.
That one's a kind of a big deal.
Yeah, it's a relatively new exploit.
I don't know that Microsoft has a fix for that one available yet.
Yeah, they just it looks like somebody based it off the Metasploit framework that exploited earlier versions of Adobe Flash, Reader, and Silverlight.
Right, and so they maybe either they're targeting people that still haven't patched.
Yeah.
Which Silverlight will come in through your Windows updates, and hopefully you're already patched. Or they've based it on that and just found a slightly different way to exploit that breaks the fix or gets around the fix.
Yeah, they have a few descriptions of how they do it. Yeah, it looks like crap. Did you hear about next story in the roundup? Did you hear about the problems the Freenode network was having recently?
A little bit, yes.
Okay, I don't know exactly the details, but Freenode said earlier today the Freenode infra team noticed that an anomaly on a single IRC server. We have identified that this was indicative of a server being compromised by an unknown third party. Upon further investigation, determined several other machines had also been compromised. Now they recommend that every single user change their NICServe password as a precaution. So if you're a Freenode user, they're recommending you go over there and change your password. I don't know anything more about this. Do you have anything to add to the story?
There's some, yes, it happened. The people at Freenode sent out messages and stuff.
Yeah, so there you go.
Reset your password. Hopefully you don't have anything sensitive tied, and hopefully you were smart and didn't reuse that password anywhere.
This next story in the roundup really gets my goat. The U.S. threatened Yahoo with massive fines of $250,000 a day in 2008 if they failed to comply with a broad demand for user data. Of course, Yahoo believed that demand was unconstitutional.
We find out that basically what they were demanding is that Yahoo participate in PRISM. The whole thing that started the first program we heard about in the NSA stuff from Snowden.
And you got to figure, too, when they had to cave like this.
You remember we talked about how Yahoo had in secret been fighting against this and didn't win.
Right.
And that's how the government managed to win, which is threaten them to charge them so much money it wouldn't be feasible to.
Yeah. It's all part of documents it's about a 1,500-page document outlines the secret and ultimately unsuccessful legal battle that Yahoo fought. And I wonder if it set a precedent, too. I don't know. But it's a good read if you guys want to check that out. All right, Alan, next story. We're moving right along. Next story in the roundup. New malware piggybacks on Twitch chat to bleed your Steam wallet. Aww.
Yeah, so they send a link through Twitch chat. You click on it, and you get some malware. And this malware then goes through your Steam, puts anything you have in your inventory on sale on the Steam market for about 30% less than what it's currently selling for in order to move it as quickly as possible. And then sends all the money in your Steam wallet plus any money you get from those sales off to the attacker.
Just because of a link in a Twitch chat, huh?
Yeah. So the malware goes after Steam and tries to steal anything that's not nailed down in your Steam account. Currently, the Steam marketplace doesn't allow you to actually sell used games, only stuff in your inventory, which is games you've bought as gift copies or perks and stuff you've earned and beta keys and stuff like that. But nothing, you can't actually resell games yet. But if you could, they would just sell everything in your Steam account for as cheaply as they could get away with, or for as much money as they can get, as quickly as they can get, and then, keep all the money.
Editor Rikai mentions that if you're a Twitch chat moderator, you could turn on link banning except for trusted users, which might be one way to help your users from this.
But
Alan,
people should know better than to click links in chat.
Yeah, they should. You linked in the roundup a story from Slashdot. Why is it taking so long to secure internet routing?
Yeah, so basically we've seen BGP hijacks and stuff before where, company, ISP in a small country is trying to block YouTube or something and accidentally blocks YouTube for people outside of there. Or we talked about ones where bad guys were doing a BGP hijack to steal traffic from a bank and intercept people trying to go to the bank's website and perform phishing on them, or various other different types of hijacks like that. And it's like, why does that keep happening? It's like people have proposed these systems where we used, known good public key infrastructure encryption and stuff in order to solve this, right? To only trust routing updates that are signed properly and so on. And part of it, and also it's like, why don't we have egress filtering so that spoofed packets don't make it outside the network? Right? Like all those attacks that did the NTP server with the spoofed addresses. Well, if we blocked any packets leaving, if each company blocked packets leaving its network coming from IP addresses that aren't from their network, that would solve that. But obviously, because networks are always changing, you get more addresses, you'd have to add them to that whitelist. And if you forgot, those addresses wouldn't work. And you'd be like, why aren't they working? And so a lot of times they just don't bother. So, oftentimes people will say it's because, we only upgrade our core routers every 10 years or something, and, we can't afford them or whatever. But a lot of these security features have been around long enough, even the old routers support them. They just haven't been engaged because it's something that kind of has to be done all at once. And so... It's
big and scary and a big project. A lot of time and effort for some people.
Yeah, but also, especially if it had to be turned on everywhere at once, imagine trying to coordinate that with every ISP in the world or something. It'd just be... Yeah.
Very much so.
But anyway, there's some interesting discussion there, and if you're interested in that topic, you can read more.
All right. So now grab your table salt and prepare to indulge, because I'm not sure exactly if we can trust it, but Apple says, starting with iOS 8, they'll no longer be able to decrypt iOS 8 phones, even for a valid law enforcement warrant. Now, I'm not exactly sure how they're accomplishing this. However, a post over on the Washington Post seems to imply that the way they're doing this is essentially Apple was in the past storing a version of your key and now no longer is. Here's what it reads. The key is the encryption that Apple mobile devices automatically put in place when a user selects a passcode, making it difficult for anyone who lacks a passcode to access the information, including photos, emails, and recordings. Apple once maintained the ability to unlock some content on devices for legally binding police requests, but will no longer do so for iOS 8. And they say, Apple goes on to say, unlike our competitors, Apple cannot bypass your passcode and therefore cannot access this data. So it is not technically feasible for us to respond to government warrants for the extraction of this data from devices running iOS 8. Don't know exactly what that means.
So it sounds like before what they had was called a recovery key. So basically when you're encrypting stuff, you set what key to encrypt it to, and they would just encrypt it to two keys. One being yours, so that you could decrypt it, and one being theirs, so they could decrypt it.
Right.
Now they're just not going to include their key, so that when something's encrypted, you need your passcode. So if the police want the data off your phone, they have to force you to give up that passcode instead of just taking it to Apple and asking nicely.
The former head of the FBI Criminal Investigative Division called this problematic, saying that it'll contribute to the steady decrease of law enforcement's ability to collect key evidence to solve crime. So they're not happy about it. So it's got the FBI a little upset, it looks like.
Yeah, well, no more free lunch.
However, it is important to note this does not apply to iCloud data, right? Apple will still have a key to that because it's on their servers, and they can still decrypt that based on law enforcement requests. So if you're syncing everything up to your iCloud account anyways, it doesn't really matter. Just something to consider. How about this one? Facebook turned off an entire data center, just to see how things go.
Yep.
You got to do it at some point, right, Alan?
Right. Well, maybe not quite to that point. Apparently, they shut off tens of megawatts of stuff. But yeah, so they wanted to make sure that even if one of their data centers went out, say there was a hurricane or something, that everything would still work. And they said, well, it didn't go 100% smoothly. They've got some improvements in the pipeline, but
it's pretty boring overall. It looks like.
Yeah, they said there was less hair on fire than they expected.
They did some fire drills ahead of time, as you would expect.
Yes. Now, they're not the only ones doing something like this. Obviously, Netflix has this system called the Simian Army, which they have a bunch of different apps named after different types of monkeys and gorillas and so on, that purposely go around disrupting stuff at Netflix. Except for, it's my impression that it's a little less scheduled. It just goes around breaking things on purpose all the time.
Whoa.
Randomly. And the resiliency is supposed to mean that none of it ever matters. And if it does break, then that's something for the admins to fix.
That's a really ballsy way to do it.
Yes. I think there's some coordination to it. I'm pretty sure they don't run these in the middle of the night when everyone's trying to sleep.
Or like during peak hours, maybe. I don't know.
Right, but they do go around breaking stuff on purpose to make sure that, right, rather than trying to build one delicate system that everybody puts all their effort into making sure that stays up, it's make sure that any component can go down and it doesn't break anything.
That's pretty great. And look at, you know what? It makes me wonder what I could, probably nothing. I don't think there's anything I could shut down in the studio and wouldn't impact something. I have pretty much no redundancy. Fly by the seat of our pants here at JB1 Studios, Alan. Yep. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of this week's TechSNAP. Now, we'd like to get your feedback. Please go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com and click that contact link. Choose TechSNAP from the drop-down and send in your storage, your networking, your security, your infrastructure, your BSD, your Linux, your networking, whatever it is. I don't care. I'm not going to judge. Send them in. We'll answer them. And don't forget, you can join us live most Thursdays. Not next Thursday, but pretty much almost all Thursdays. Just go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar. We've got every live show listed there, and it'll automatically convert to your local time zone to make it even easier. So how about that? Alan, is there anything else we want to cover before we run today?
Nope. I think that's about it.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, everyone. We'll see you right back here next week.